Hi all, I'd like to present you an ultra-sharp encounter in round 8 of the Olympiad between Alexei Shirov and Emanuel Berg. So Shirov kicked off with e4, and Berg is also a very creative, dynamic attacking player. He played the fighting Sicilian defence. So we have knight f3, d6 was chosen by Emanuel. White plays normal mainline stuff. Okay, and now we have the move a6. Now bishop g5 was played, so the start of an aggressive system, but how is it going to be evolved? Will it be like f4 or queen d2, or maybe just queen f3, or would it be like bishop c4? There's a large number of choices, I think, available to white here. f4 was chosen though first, and now a rather unusual, curious move, blocking in the king's bishop for the moment. The curious move is queen e2, as if e5 is going to be a logical threat, because that bishop is pinning that knight against the queen. So black logically softens the blow of e5, making e5 not too possible at the moment. So white carries on now with castling queenside. Okay, so the black king's still in the centre, and one would guess, white's going to do a standard pawn avalanche if it dared castle kingside, with like g4, maybe bishop f6 to get the bishop out of the way and continue with g5, and just generally blast the black king to bits. Emanuel decides actually to leave his bishop for the moment on f8, rather logical move as one would expect, just b5. So b5 does various things. It's a thematic move. It prepares a nice comforting diagonal for the bishop, just logically on b7, to put more pressure on e4, which flows naturally with b4 to chase the knight, which is also defending e4. So it's standard Sicilian stuff. But the question now is, should white risk a potential, weakening move, a lever that black can use to sort of, potentially get an even more aggressive attack here? Is the question of a3. Well, a3 was played, and there's a couple of issues really, not just b4 as a potential threat, but also this c4 square on this logical semi-open file. You see, black has always got nice manoeuvres in the Sicilian as well, just to try and get a knight to c4. And in this position, with the queen blocking the bishop, there's in fact no natural bishop c4s, just to carry on with the attack. So has Shirov perhaps played a bit too casually here? Well, Berg carries on logically with bishop b7, and Shirov carries on regardless of the fact that he's blocking, the bishop from the c4 square. He carries on caveman style with g4, and not minding also the bishop on this diagonal as well, potentially eyeing the rook. But this b4 has been prevented at the moment. It's now that the bishop finally moves, bishop e7, as though black might consider casting into it, as they say, casting kingside. And Shirov actually plays the move bishop h4, which, as well as unblocking this g-pawn, maybe the bishop can also swing back to g3, or even in some lines I've noticed it can come back to e1 to maybe defend the c3 knight if needed. So it's a useful move. Instead of committing to bishop takes f6, that might give black a dangerous dark squared bishop later. Okay, but black still has that seemingly menacing idea now that he can occupy that very logical, lovely square, that c4 square. So knight b6 was played. Now Shirov carries on aggressively with g5, chasing that knight back. But these knights, they're ready to swing in for the attack. This knight to c5 maybe. And even, from there, maybe even knight a4. Okay, Shirov is not concerned. He plays f5. So he's puncturing that e6, and e6 can also be targeted maybe with bishop h3. So black has to do something about e6. And one thing to do about it is to play e5. Now normally e5 would be weakening d5, but black has enough pieces on d5 at the moment, so it's not a major problem, this concession. Or is it? Knight f3 was played here, and now knight c4. So black seemingly played very logical thematic moves, with a3 now being a concrete tactical vulnerability, because actually knight takes a3 might be a threat, with queen takes c3 to follow. But here, this is very interesting from the perspective of a white player trying to play like this. That, you know, maybe some of us would move the king or protect the knight. Well, actually, more so protect the knight, because knight takes a3 does seem a fairly concrete threat. But Shirov, being highly tactical and creative, he finds another solution to the position, which I think needs some explanation here. He plays the move bishop h3, and I put some arrows here, as you can see. So d7 would distract the queen, which means that the c3 knight wouldn't be under fire. And black reacted with f6, but let's see if knight takes a3 what would have happened. I believe f6 with the help of engine analysis. So black takes, and now bishop takes d7, and the problem is here that after king takes d7, g takes f6, and we notice now that e5 is under fire. So bishop moving back, knight takes e5 check, and this would be better for white. In fact, and here there'll be a crushing move actually. Knight takes f7, just starting to tear into the black king position as well. So if queen f7 just takes, and white, you know, be looking a lot better. All right, so bishop h3 is a very precise reply to this idea. And, you know, maybe the foresight was there even before, you know, when a3 was played, that it's going to become a tactical target for this knight on c3, that, you know, knight a3 is going to emerge. So black does something which is seemingly quite logical, not too much of a concession. Black plays f6, and now Shirov continues with taking on f6 and playing knight d5. Okay, he's grabbing that light squared bishop, but it's one less knight to occupy d5 in the future. He can occupy d5 temporarily with his rook, and he's solved the knight takes a3 problem. So it's not all that bad, you might imagine, but with the next move, which is another logical forcing move, look at these knights, and there's still the potential threat of b4, and these knights potentially combining, say knight a4s or knight b2s. It looks fairly scary, which makes this a kind of very frightening game to play through for both sides. The black king at the moment doesn't seem too vulnerable. There's one route to it via h5, but apart from that, you know, white's pieces do not seem particularly well coordinated, for example for an infiltration on the g file. So anyway, rook d3, and now Berg speeds up things on this side of the board, on the queen side, by playing the move b4, and the board is starting to be set on fire by both players, not just Shirov. So what does white do here? Well, the natural a takes b4, well, what us patzels might consider, and a5. If white tries to still, you know, keep lines closed to the king, maybe a4, and now queen c5, and black would seem to be gaining a lot of pressure and be better in this kind of position with that b file now as a sort of target for attack. And it doesn't matter that the black king's in the centre, because there's no white pieces able to arrange to get to it very quickly, whilst black on the other hand is starting to, you know, maybe consider moves like even king d7 and the other rook to b8, and then move this, and b2 is totally under fire. In fact, you know, there's a threat of mating at the moment, so I think black would be better here. You know, white might have to take emergency defensive measures, but it looks as though black's getting the initiative there. So actually Shirov, he plays what seems to be an ingenious move. He plays actually a4 to try and slow down the black attack. So the curious thing for me is, you know, this carefulness on handling black's counterplay on the queen side seems quite instructive to me. Now Berg, if he plays knight takes a4, then there is this fork, materialistic fork on the side where the king is, which some of us would be scared to play, but now rook takes c3, and white would be clearly better, getting those two knights for a rook. So that's fine, but Berg plays the more menacing knight takes b2. So this is getting quite kind of scary for the white king. After king takes, knight takes a4, the king goes towards the centre now, so knight c3, queen e3, so the king has the square d2 at the moment. Berg exerts more pressure on that c file with rook c8, but the king evacuates now with king d2. Okay, now there's also things to consider like knight d1 checks, and Not quite here, because maybe the king can just sidestep with king e2. Doesn't have to take on b1. But Berg continues to try and get this piece into the attack, perhaps, and also close up the d file. He plays the move d5, which seems to be a logical move. He doesn't need at the moment his h8 resource, so he would have quite a few attacking pieces against the white king. E takes d5 was played, now e4, and it's here you might think also, you know, isn't white just losing material as well? This looks as though potentially it is a total disaster, but Shirov plays the move bishop takes f6. So at the moment, if e takes, then maybe, you know, bishop takes h8, and white I assume is better there. Okay, we're getting an incredibly sharp position now. Black did play bishop takes f6, and you might think, well, what has white got for the piece? Well, he's actually potentially liberating, believe it or not, this seemingly rubbish bishop on h3 at the moment, because his next move d6 is now supporting d7, which would be a nasty fork. So black logically blockades that pawn, but maybe this was the exact moment where knight b1 check would have been effective. So my analysis implies like king e2 check, maybe queen c4 take, and if d7 just allow that to happen, and black would seem to be doing fine here. But in the game it seems to be a disastrous turnaround of the position then. If black is doing fine, black's not doing fine in the game continuation, which was queen d7. And the reason, as I say, I gave the impression from earlier, this bishop now is ingeniously liberated. I mean, the whole game is tactical genius, but I wonder if you can spot this next move if I give you 10 seconds. Okay, knight e5, just liberating the bishop. The bishop's protected by the queen on e3 at the moment. So Berg took it, and f6 was played, and now finally this knight b1. Maybe not quite the right timing here. The king can go to e1 now without any queen c2 checks. Queen c6, and now d7, picking up that rook on c8. And it seems now rook d7 is quite a nasty rook on the 7th. If king takes, then this other rook can come in for the attack. So the black king goes to e8. Now we have check. And now we have rook takes e5. And Berg decides to resign. So he's actually a whole rook down here, and his attack's blown. I don't think there's any attacking opportunities. Let's have a quick check with an engine here in this resign position. Just queen c3 is given as in fact the best move. So queen b6 actually is a mate in 3 here. So queen d4, and then that forces a mate. If like queen c, anyway, black's a rook down, so it is all over. But what a tense tactical encounter. So I think one move blew it here for black when Berg played queen d7. He's stopping his queen c2 resource, which I think was quite kind of useful in this position. Of course, it's dead easy to say with help of an engine, oh, knight b1 in this particular position. But that appears to be the case, that knight b1 here would be very dangerous. Now if king e1, then queen takes c2 again. If d7, just king f7, sack the rook, and maybe this kind of position would be playable, even though black is actually the exchange down. I think this might actually be survivable. This kind of position is about equal according to engine evaluation. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that really tense encounter. Please leave any comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.